Welcome to the CBT Dive, a vodcast that goes into the lives of real people with real struggles. Each episode welcomes a new guest who wants to explore a challenging situation using the most common cognitive behavioral therapy tool, the thought record. Your host, Raheem Thawa, is a social worker and psychotherapist based in Toronto and well known for his work in LGBTQ communities. He's created the CBT Dive to demystify what therapy can look like and share intervention skills for wellness. We hope that each episode helps you along on your own journey for insight and self-compassion.
In this episode, I'm pleased to welcome Z. Z is a queer man living in Toronto, loves to spend time with his dog, and like many of us, he is constantly trying to manage his adult ADHD and anxiety. He's tried pharmaceutical interventions and they've been useful, but are certainly not a magic bullet. Welcome, Z. How are you doing today?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. Z, I have a couple questions for you. Before we begin, what do you know about CBT or what have you heard about it?
I've heard that it's typically done in like a shorter amount of time than regular therapy, which I'm used to. And I know that it's kind of about mindset shifts, I believe, but I'm not 100% sure.
Okay, yeah, exactly. So the purpose of CBT is to take you through a journey of your own thoughts in a more structured and linear way. And you're right. Usually CBT interventions are done in a way that are more outcome focused than simply talk therapy on its own. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to share my screen. And we're going to focus on a situation that you've already given me a sense that you might want to talk about today. So if I understand correctly, you often struggle with procrastination. Is that right?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. And you were telling me before we started today that you've been thinking for a long time about starting a new project, a side hustle, and you get these great ideas. And then there isn't a ton of motivation to carry it through. Does that sound like you?
Yeah, it's motivation, but it's also just like I don't typically act like I think a lot, but I don't necessarily kind of take the steps to do it.
Right. And so just to make our situation that much clearer, when do you do all of your thinking and generation of ideas?
All the time.
Just always happening?
Like my mind is kind of always going and thinking about things. So I'd say that like there's not a specific time of day that I'm thinking about things. I think during the day I'm thinking more about work stuff, and then on my off time I'm thinking about more personal stuff. But I would say that overall It's just kind of continuous dialogue in my head.
Okay, so let's come up with an example of something that you've been thinking about for a while that you tend to avoid, or you haven't been able to, there's been like this, failure to launch, so to speak. It could be something big and deeply personal. It could also be something smaller. Depends on what you're comfortable sharing.
So I think the idea of like a side hustle in general, like not something necessarily specific, but just a general, like, I have these ideas that I think could be cool businesses or could be cool, just passion projects, I guess, on the side that I typically don't, put the attention and action behind in order to kind of make it work.
Okay. Tell me a bit about one of your passion projects, if you can, just so we can get some context about what it is you're thinking of doing. That way I know if you're thinking about something that is too much for someone to chew or if it's kind of reasonable.
Sure. So there's kind of a few different projects that I've thought about in the past, but I think most recently I've been taking some training for coaching, so professional coaching, where I'd like to be able to offer coaching services or, I guess coaching services to individuals with ADHD, as well as kind of queer racialized individuals who might need kind of coaching from a career perspective. And I want to offer this up kind of as a service to, people who may not be able to access those types of services regularly.
Yeah. And so, so you've already been doing the training portion of it. Is that right?
Yeah, I took a week-long course on it, and
Okay, so the training for coaching services part is done, and now you're thinking about turning it into an offering. You want to support folks with ADHD, perhaps QT BIPOC communities in particular, around career. Is development accurate?
Yeah, development, like general life stuff. I think that I'm, the coaching training that I got from a foundations perspective was pretty broad in that it wasn't specific to one specific area necessarily, but
yes.
Yeah.
So how long have you been thinking about this initiative where you want to specifically, have the side hustle and support folks with ADHD and folks around career?
Probably for the last 6 to 8 months.
Okay. So my sense is that there isn't one specific situation where the feeling of avoidance or the feeling of intimidation or whatever the feeling is comes up. It's more like it's an ongoing thing. Like you're always thinking about the idea, and it's not when you're at work or when you're with a friend that you think about it more. You're kind of always thinking about it. So the situation is not, before I go to bed, it's just thinking about this thing in general, right?
Well, and I would say that it's like a thought process that's applicable to many different things. So like, I'm going to get organized and then I don't take the steps to do that, or I'm going to start this new habit and then I don't do that. Like, that's just kind of I have all these great ideas, but then I, can rarely follow through on them, or I tend to rarely follow through on them.
Okay. So you've got this idea to create a support service, and you've been thinking about it for some time. So my question to you is, when you think about starting this support service, I hope you don't mind, that's what I'm going to call it for now. Is that okay?
Sure.
Okay. What feelings come up for you?
Like, name them or rate?
Let's name them first. So I imagine excitement is one of them, for example.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Excitement. Kind of like nervousness or a sense of like, can I do this?
Okay. So nervousness and the can I do this? I think I would call it self-doubt. Does that fit?
Yeah. Self-doubt. Yeah.
Okay. What else?
Like a concern around if I were to do this, like what I would have to give up. So, to make time for something like this. So in addition to, because this would be in addition to the work that I'm already doing for my day job. And so, this would be outside of that, obviously. And so that means that there are things that I would have to potentially give up, like socialization, time with my family, those types of things.
I'm hearing a couple of things there. If I were to turn those into feeling words, one would be overwhelm, and the other would be potential loss or anticipatory loss, right? Like there's something you have to give up. Okay, great. So there's excitement. Are there any other positive feelings?
there's a general sense that I could probably help people. So that makes me feel like useful, or like that I could be giving back to the, that my services could be used by, individuals that require it, type thing.
Yeah. And so if you use the word useful, I'm trying to figure out what that would make you feel like. I mean, useful could be a feeling. Like at the moment, do you feel like you're not making use of all of your skills, or you're not involved in meaningful things?
Well, I would say that like my work, like my day job is not necessarily like, I feel useful, but in a different way. Like I feel like this is more of a,
Okay. What if I change this to the feeling purposeful? Would that capture it?
Yeah, that's
okay.
Good.
So we've got excitement, purposeful, nervous, self-doubt, overwhelm, anticipatory loss. Are there any other feelings? And I'll suggest a few in case it helps. So curious, eager, afraid, anxious, scared.
Afraid, anxious. Curious is also probably one.
Did you say afraid?
No.
No, sorry. Scared.
Scared, yeah.
Okay, great. I just want to make sure I'm not making things up. Okay, so look, this is a good list of feelings. One more feeling that I'm going to ask about that sometimes people miss is that's often paired with self-doubt is sadness. Do you feel sad when you think about starting this work? No. Okay. All right. So Z, when you are, actually, let's go through each of these feelings, and I'd love for you to rate them for me on a scale of 1 to 10. 10 is the most intense, and 1 is the least intense. Okay. And it's how you feel when you're specifically thinking about starting the project, right? The support service. So how excited do you feel?
Like an 8.
Okay. And how purposeful does it make you feel?
Well, I feel like it would make me feel purposeful if I was doing it. So I don't think like it's probably 0 because I'm not doing it, but it's like
when you think about it, so you're not doing it yet. I wonder if instead of 0, we could make it just a touch higher, because I can appreciate that you're not feeling it intensely, but I think when you imagine yourself doing that, you tap into that feeling a bit.
Yeah, sure. 4. Then say like 3 or 4.
Okay. Let's go 3. Great. I just wanted to, I think a 0 is like not giving yourself enough credit. Okay. And then curious.
That's probably like a 6.
Beauty. All right. Now we come to some of the more challenging feelings. So anxious.
8.
Nervous.
8.
Okay. Self-doubt.
9.
Scared.
7.
Overwhelmed.
Actually, scared is 5.
Okay. And overwhelmed.
9.
And anticipatory loss.
8.
All right. Boom. So, okay, that's quite a range of feelings, and there's a high intensity to most of them, right? So when you think about doing this, I think to be more specific, it's the challenge is thinking about starting, right? And so when you think about starting, what kinds of things do you do that lead to that make it what kinds of things do you do when you're not starting the project or when you're not getting it off the ground? For example, are there specific ways that you avoid or put it off?
Yeah, like Netflix.
Okay. So Netflix, do you jump to another project? That can be common sometimes.
Yeah, but I always have like 10 projects running around in my head. So, if
Okay.
I'm not starting one, then I'm thinking about the other type thing. I think in terms of behavior, like I'll find other things to do. So I'll find like, other activities to do, other ways to spend my time. I'll push it off because I'll say, it's too much work or it's not going to work, or I like all that kind of like self-talk kind of comes up in terms of like the negative self-talk.
Yes. So I'm going to say here, procrastinate and negative self-talk, right? Those seem to be, they're kind of related. Like you put something off and you rationalize, you give yourself a reason why you can't do it. Is there anything else?
No, not really.
No. Okay. I want to go back to the feelings list for a sec. I wonder if we forgot the word avoidant, because when you say procrastinate, it makes me think you're also a bit avoidant. Would you say that's there?
Yes.
Yeah.
And probably like 10.
Okay. All right. All right. So you're thinking about starting the project, right? And you probably know what your first step is. What is the first step to starting a project like this to be able to create a support service?
Like, we'll have to find clients. I have to, set aside time to do it. I have to commit to it as well, because I don't want to start something. A lot of issues that I have is that like I'll start a project and then kind of leave it in the middle. And I feel like I can't do that with something like this because other people are involved.
Yes. You know what? You're bringing up another feeling word. And I just want to check with you before I write it down. You talk about anticipatory loss, like I'll have to give something else up, but there's also some ambivalence. Would you agree? Are you familiar with the word
what do
ambivalence?
What do you mean by that?
So ambivalence usually means like to be undecided or unsure how much you want to move forward.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. And what would we rate that?
Like a 9.
9. Okay. I promise you I'll stop adding to your feelings list. It's really, it's not something I usually do. I said it was a linear chart, and so we're supposed to move in one direction. So I'll stop coming back to it. My question for you is, when you think about starting the new project, right, and creating this support service, you feel excited, purposeful, and curious. Why do you feel those positive feelings? What are the thoughts connected to those feelings? You alluded to them earlier, but I'd like for you to say them out loud again.
So the thoughts that come up when I'm thinking about this, essentially.
Yeah. So the positive feelings. So you feel excited because you would feel purposeful because.
Right. So I would feel excited because, it's something that I think I could, do well, or that I would be able to bring kind of a different perspective, because I also suffer with ADHD, and I'm also, a queer person, and I also suffer from depression. So like there's all of those kind of things that kind of come into the coaching, kind of the coach and coachee relationship, that I feel like I could really empathize around, where some other people may not be able to because they haven't had that experience.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think I could provide a unique service rooted in lived experience, ADHD, anxiety, depression. I love that. Now, tell me some of the thoughts that are connected to your self-doubt or your anxiety. What are you worried is going to happen?
So one is like I would like be bad at it, or, coach someone incorrectly and they would make a mistake in their life because of it. Like I, tend to spiral in that way. Even though coaching isn't around giving advice either. So like recognizing that it's not my job to give advice as a coach, but to help kind of the client be led through that process, and come to the conclusion on their own. But I still have that fear.
So I'm glad you mentioned that, because there's this objective, rational reality, but that's not necessarily, objective thinking isn't necessarily what drives anxiety, right? And so you have this fear that you'll mislead them, that you'll cause some kind of harm. Okay. Are there other thoughts that are connected to your anxiety or your self-doubt?
Yeah, like there's like kind of anxiety around, am I like the best person to kind of embark on something like this? Am I biting off like too much? Like, am I going to be able to maintain this? Am I, yeah.
So when you say, you're asking yourself, am I suited to do this work? Like you said, I don't know if I'm the best person, but I think when we talk about doubt, you're actually, the way you're thinking about it is, it's not, I'm not the best person. It's more like, I might not be qualified. Is that right?
It's qualified, but it's also like, do I have any right to kind of be in this space, I guess?
Okay.
So I guess that is kind of qualified, I guess, but it's, I'm not thinking about it from a degrees perspective, or like, sure, I don't have the training or education. It's just like, because people can be coaches, without any training technically, like there's no real regulatory body that's managing them. So for me, it's not so much about like the qualifications per se. When I think about qualifications, it's more on the lines of like, do I have certifications? It's more that like, am I well suited for this type of work?
Okay. And when you talk about not being well suited or being well suited, can you break that down for me a little bit more? What don't you have that makes you question whether or not you're suited?
Like, I feel like whether or not I'll be able to, properly maintain records of like, there's some like kind of administrative things that I'm thinking about. There's also like, do I have the personality for this? Like, am I going to take on other people's problems too much? Like, am I going to, personalize this or,
yes,
then there's also feelings of, like a lot of the coaches that I have met with and have worked with seem to kind of have, from the outside, I know that this, like from a rational perspective, but they seem to have kind of figured things out. Like they're in what I would consider kind of a better mental frame than I would consider myself. And so like, am I suited to do this type of work? Like, can I still coach someone with ADHD when I have ADHD myself? Or can I really coach someone who's struggling with depression when I struggle with it myself, type thing, right? Like it makes me feel like,
Yeah, absolutely. So I really appreciate a lot of the things you've been saying. You've helped me distill some of your automatic thoughts. So you'll notice on the screen, I've put some arrows where I think you've taken one thought and you really broke it down for me in different ways. So here's what I have so far, where, on the one hand, you think you could provide a unique service rooted in lived experience. But the opposite of that is also true, where you say, I may not be able to support someone if I struggle with the same things. Right. So that's one kind of double-edged sword there. I'm just going to move that up here. And then there's a worry that you might cause harm or mislead somebody. And when you say, I may not have the right to be doing this work, or I could be poorly suited, there's a few anxieties or a few pieces of self-doubt that came up. One was around messing up the admin pieces or not being able to do adequate record keeping. You worry about like the emotional toll could be heavy on you. Mm-hmm. And another part of it is you're not sure if your personality will be well suited. I want to come back to your personality though. Do you worry? What do you think people will think of your personality? If it's not well suited, it's because of what? You're too something.
I think it's not that I'm too something. It's that I'm not enough of something. Like I'm not well adjusted enough in my life to like be coaching someone, or I'm not, like I think it's more just like, do I have the quote unquote right to coach someone if like I see myself or see my life as also somewhat of a mess, or, that I have things kind of going on.
Yeah. Okay. I totally appreciate that. Now, when you avoid, right? So we're moving a little bit away from the anxiety and the self-doubt to the avoidance. So that's like, it's part of the same puzzle, but it's when you really do put things off, right? What are you thinking when you avoid? So when you watch the Netflix, you jump to another project, you procrastinate. What's the negative self-talk there? Is it different at all?
Well, when I jump to Netflix, the thought is like, oh, you can do it later type thing. Like it's a kind of
right.
But like jumping to another project is like, I get really excited by ideas and not so much by action. And so like, I like when like I come up with a new idea or I try something new but then I get over it pretty quickly as well.
Okay. All right. So look, I usually would go through the feelings a bit more and see if we could just like extract more thoughts. But the thoughts you've come up with are your automatic thoughts. And I think you've done a good job actually of kind of distilling them for me. So the next question I have for you is, when you look at these automatic thoughts, is there one that really jumps out at you that you think is the most salient, that really is central in driving your anxiety, self-doubt, sense of feeling overwhelmed?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Yeah, no problem. I'm thinking about the thoughts we've listed here.
Yeah.
Is there one in particular that's really driving? It's at the heart of the anxiety, the self-doubt, the avoidance.
It's probably like I might not be the right person to be doing this work, or.
Okay, so.
Oh, you mean like from the smaller pieces that you've picked out too?
No, it could be a bigger piece or a smaller piece, but it seems like you're into this like last section here.
Yeah.
And so I'm just trying to figure out which one we should pick, just to be very specific. Because like, is your biggest concern the record keeping? Or is your biggest concern that you're not well adjusted enough to coach someone else? Like, I'm trying to figure out which one is the biggest thing that drives the anxiety.
Mm-hmm. And I would say it's the kind of, I may not be the right person to do this work, or I might be poorly suited for it.
Okay. So I could be poorly suited. Okay. I'm thinking, when we say, so am I picking this one? I'm not sure my personality will be well suited. Or are you thinking, should I expand?
I'm just thinking about all of them. Like, it's like the overall one.
Yeah. So Up here, I could be poorly suited.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I am interested. I think that for me, I think that sounds a bit broad. And so I'm thinking, I just want to beef it up a bit and make it a bit more all encompassing. So I'm going to say record keeping, emotional toll, my own adjustment. So, because we talked about all those things, and if you're going to pick something that broad, I just want to make sure it captures what we're talking about. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, just to be clear, then your biggest concern is not that you're going to coach someone in a way that'll mislead them or cause harm. It's more that you think overarchingly you might not be suited. There's an admin piece. There's going to be an emotional toll on you, and you're worried about your own adjustment, like your own symptoms of the things you struggle with.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, all right. So this thought that I have put in bold, I could be poorly suited for this work. Record keeping, emotional toll, my own adjustment. I've bolded it. That is called the hot thought. That is the thing that is the most salient. It's driving some of the most difficult feelings you have. It's driving the intensity of those feelings. So now we're going to evaluate the hot thought. Okay. So give me some evidence that supports the hot thought. So suggests that you might, in fact, be poorly suited for this work because you've got that idea from somewhere. And so I want to honor it and explore it a bit with you.
So, well, evidence around like record keeping is just like my work. Like I'm not, someone who's very detail oriented. I've never been very detail oriented. I'm not great at like keeping records or, having a process orientation. And it's something that I've been able to, through my work, kind of hand off to my team in many ways, right? So I don't have to worry about that. And so if I'm doing this as like a solo thing, I don't have the support of my teams or anyone to delegate to.
Okay, fair. So you're not great at keeping records in other jobs or roles, and you usually delegate this. I hear that. And you had also mentioned that you compare yourself to other coaches, and there was something about their experience or where they are in life. Can you tell me a bit about that?
Yeah. So the sense that you get from coaches, or like at least the coaches that I've interacted with, is that they're generally very positive and bubbly and like, open-minded. And they're like, they just have like a certain kind of personality that makes them, I don't know, like it gives them that, it gives you that feeling that they have their life together, I guess, in many ways. Like they've clearly gone through coaching themselves and they've become very comfortable with themselves, and they've, they understand themselves better. And, I feel like I've been doing a lot of that work, but I don't necessarily feel like I'm at that same level that they are.
Okay. And so you've met coaches and they're really positive in terms of their attitude, right? And they're bubbly and they look like they have their life together. So I love that because that tells me where a lot of the anxiety is coming from. Give me one additional piece of evidence that supports this hot thought that you might be poorly suited. And I'm thinking along the lines of your experience in the past around the emotional toll of some kind of work. The emotional toll of this kind of interpersonal work, or even where you found your own maladjustment symptoms got in the way of being able to help someone. Has that happened before?
I think just in my personal life, I can sometimes take like other people's problems onto my own shoulders. And so I feel like,
what is that?
Sorry, go ahead.
No, that's right. Can you clarify, what does it look like when you take on someone else's problems? What does that mean? Like you feel it in your body for like some time?
Yeah. Or like, I think about it a lot. Like I'm worried about them. Like I'm following up and messaging them. Like, I'm trying to help them like figure out what to do. Like I feel like I become very much invested in that person's problem.
Yes.
Or issues or whatever it is.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've taken on others' problems in the past, and that includes thinking about the issue, wanting to problem solve, and then you get a bit worried. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. And I can appreciate why that would really make you worry about your suitability, because then you're thinking, oh my goodness, like I can't think about this for everybody. Like how sustainable will that be? Right. All right. So let's go to the next column. I'd love to think about some evidence that does not support this idea that you're poorly suited. So we're thinking about reasons why you might be well suited. And what's evidence in your life that suggests that you could be well suited for this kind of work?
I think at work, I'm like a pretty resourceful individual that people come to for, help on something or just to bounce ideas off me. Like I think I'm seen as kind of like an open-minded individual that will give honest feedback to people. And so, but in a nice way, I guess.
Yes. So you're resourceful in your day job. People come to you for ideas and feedback, i.e. they like your personality. Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Let's keep going along this train of thought. So what other evidence do you have that you might be well suited? For example, I'm particularly curious about your lived experience. Through your lived experience, have you in the past been able to help somebody in a unique way?
Yeah, I feel like I've been, I feel like I'm often relying on my lived experiences to kind of view problems and different things that people might bring to me. So I feel like I already do that. And I think my lived experiences have also allowed me to become more of like an empathetic person, because there's a lot that, people may not know or understand or, think about when they think about me, because, people are good at like hiding their stuff that they don't want people to see. And so I think that for me, like I understand how people do that, and I can bring a lot of empathy to like a coaching process.
That's really great. So what I'm hearing is you already rely on your lived experience. And you said to support, did you say people in general or friends?
Yeah, friends, family, coworkers, okay. Whoever. Yeah.
Okay, I'm just going to say people in your life more generally. Yeah. And your lived experience helps you access your own empathy. Mm-hmm. That sounds really pretty amazing. So what you're saying here is that your lived experience really is a strength, and you've already been using it for a while. Have there been any experiences, or is there any evidence in your life that suggests you can manage emotional toll, the emotional, weight of other people's problems fairly well? And it's okay if you can't, because that might be part of something we work on. But I'm wondering if you've had an experience of being able to do that well.
Yeah, I think that like I've helped a lot of people, or people have relied on me, and I'm able to take on that stress. I just think that sometimes when I think about this kind of particular goal in, or when I think about this in particular, my concern also is that I don't necessarily know the people that I'm going to be coaching. So I don't necessarily have a personal background or history with them. And so that also makes me nervous because at least with like a friend or a family member, I have somewhat regular contact with that person. I'm able to kind of adjust as I go versus if it's a coaching client, then it's a bit of a different dynamic.
Yeah, I hear that. There's more of a social risk in a way, and you're more vulnerable, right? So you know what? Actually, I think these two pieces of evidence that do not support the hot thought are enough. So we've got so here are the ideas that support the idea that you could be poorly suited for the work. I'm not great at keeping records. I haven't been great at keeping records in other jobs. I've met coaches that are really positive and bubbly, and they have their life together. I've taken on others' problems before, and that's been heavy weight. And then on the other side, we have some ideas that you could be well suited, and that is that you're quite resourceful. People come to you regularly and they like your personality, and you already rely on your lived experience to support people, right? Have you met people who have really positive thinking personalities that are not necessarily what you're looking for or other people are looking for?
Like, do you mean in terms of a coach or just in general?
It could be a coach or it could be in general. I just wonder what you think about the positive, bubbly personality. I just wonder how necessary you think that is or how important it is.
I don't think it's important, but I do think it gives a sense of like comfort to the person who's being coached that like, oh, like it gets them to buy in, I guess, into the coaching process a bit.
Okay. So now I want us to go over to the next column. And this is where we're going to come up with an alternative thought, or sometimes called a balanced thought. I want you to take your hot thought, I could be poorly suited for this work, record keeping, emotional toll, my own adjustment, and come up with another thought that is a bit more balanced. Now, this thought doesn't have to be a positive affirmation, like I can do anything I put my mind to. That's probably not that helpful. I'm thinking more about something that is a slight alteration to that, given the evidence you've just shared.
Sure.
So give it a moment, think about it, and then I'm happy to jump in to help as well.
So can you explain it again? Alternative thought?
Yeah, no problem.
Alternative thought to
the hot thought. Your hot thought is I could be, yeah.
So I guess the alternative to the hot thought is that because I have these things that I think make me poorly suited, they could actually make me a good coach as well. So, it may make the other person, especially if I'm like coaching someone with ADHD, for example, like if I don't get the record keeping done on time, like it could be potentially seen as like, okay, like the client could see this as like okay, he's struggling with this too type thing, or they could relate to it.
Yeah. So some of the qualities that make me feel like I'm poorly suited might actually make me relatable.
Yes.
I love that. Yeah. And are there other alternative thoughts you can think of?
I think from a personality perspective, in terms of like whether it's well suited, is that my personality, I might be able to come off as a bit more authentic. And so that, I guess that's kind of along the relatability line too, but
that's still great. I think it's worth saying on its own. My personality is authentic, and simply doesn't match the bubbly, I don't know what we call it, an archetype.
Yeah.
Okay. So those two are really good. I wonder if there's if there's any more. So, for example, like if it takes too much of an emotional toll or you're struggling while doing this work, like what are some of the things you can do to move forward or to move through some of those challenges?
Mm. I don't know. Can you give me like an example?
Sure. So when you've helped your friends, it's been challenging because you've taken on their problems, right? You feel invested. You know, from my perspective, I wonder, like, do you leave them hanging or do you see it through and then decide later on then you're going to have different boundaries?
Oh, no, I always see it through.
Okay. So you're good at seeing things through. And then are you good at introducing new boundaries for when it comes to a future person or a future friend?
No.
Okay. So that's okay. I'm glad you're being honest because to me, that says like this might be part of the block you're having, right? So maybe we need to say something here about, um, uh, the fact that your emotional work boundaries will need to be an ongoing, it'll be something that you work on an ongoing basis. Right. Because you're being honest that isn't all sorted out. And that's a work in progress. So working on emotional boundaries is a work in progress, and doesn't have to be sorted before beginning this venture. Okay, we've got 3 alternative thoughts. Some of the qualities that make me feel like I'm poorly suited might actually make me relatable. My personality is authentic and simply doesn't match the bubbly archetype. Working on emotional boundaries is a work in progress and doesn't have to be sorted before beginning this venture. Now, I'd like you to take a look at each of these and tell me what is the extent to which you believe each of these alternative thoughts. And this is what makes it different. This is why I said no affirmations, because people tend to have low levels of belief in affirmations. So when you look at these alternative thoughts, which one do you like? Tell me about your belief for the first one: high, medium, low.
Of the thought, or like as it was related to excitement?
Oh, no, sorry. Just in the alternative thoughts column.
Okay.
Some of the qualities that make me feel like I'm poorly suited might actually make me relatable. How much do you believe that?
Like 6.
6, okay. And my personality is authentic and simply doesn't match the bubbly archetype. How much do you believe that?
9.
And working on emotional boundaries is a work in progress and doesn't have to be sorted before beginning the venture. How much do you believe that?
5.
Okay. So we can see that, the personality being authentic and not having to match the archetype is you have the highest belief in that. So when you think of that thought, let's start from the bottom of the feeling list and work our way back up. Where is your anticipatory loss? Are you worried as much about giving things up?
When I'm looking at that thought specifically, the personality trait thing. Okay. I'd say it stays the same.
Stays the same. Okay. 8. And how about your ambivalence? So indecision around wanting to start.
Yeah, probably reduce it a bit, like just 7.
7. Okay. How about feeling avoidant?
Probably 7 or 8.
7 or 8. Okay. And overwhelmed?
Probably 6.
Okay. Now we've got these other ones that they're tough, but scared. How scared do you feel?
Let's say 5.
Okay. And self-doubt?
7.
Okay. And nervous?
7.
All right. Anxious?
6.
Curious?
7.
7. Okay. Purposeful?
3.
3. Okay. Excitement?
8.
All right. So let's have a look at this chart and take a deep breath in for me. In this chart, you're thinking about starting a new project. You've got a slew of feelings, quite intense in ratings. Your hot thought is, I could be poorly suited for this work, record keeping, emotional toll, my own adjustment. And then the alternative thought you come up with is, well, my personality is authentic and simply doesn't match the bubbly archetype, right? And that's okay. Excitement 8, purposeful 3, curious 7, anxious 6, nervous 7, self-doubt 7, scared 5, overwhelmed 6, avoidance 8, ambivalence 7, anticipatory loss 8. So most of your numbers went down just a touch or stayed the same. Tell me a bit about how you're feeling having gone through this process.
I think I like the format of it because it allows you to kind of sequentially go through it, which is not how my thoughts are typically. Like my thoughts are very all over the place and spiraling and all this kind of stuff. So I think by placing it out in this type of format, it's helpful to kind of see and challenge also my thoughts when you kind of write it down. I was reading them and being like, okay, like kind of assessing for myself, like how true are these things? So I think that the format of it is helpful to understand that.
Sure. I appreciate that. Look, I want to also point out that there are a couple of feelings of yours that went down quite a bit. Oops. And I messed up which ones they were. Give me one sec here. Overwhelmed. Oh, I don't know why I'm messing with it. Okay. Your overwhelmed went down from 9 to a 6. Can you tell me a little bit about why you feel less overwhelmed?
Because I think a lot of the feeling of being overwhelmed comes from this feeling of like, am I like the coach type? So I think that,
okay.
Yeah.
And your ambivalence score went down, which makes me think that you feel a bit more committed to doing this project.
Yeah, I think like when you refocus and kind of reassess those things, it's natural to think about, I think you start to like pick away at the stories that you're telling yourself. So I think that ambivalence goes down.
Okay. And with anxiety, nervous, self-doubt, avoidance, they all went down a bit. And I wonder, how do you think that impacts your behavior when you attempt to start this project or you think about starting this project? Like, if those are reduced in intensity, what does that allow you to do potentially?
Well, it allows me to reduce the chatter that's kind of happening in my brain around like why this isn't going to work, and more focused on why this could work, or what the opportunity might present type thing.
Yes. So you made an important point here. It's almost like there's room for a new feeling. And when you're switching from why this can't work to how this could work, it seems like the new feeling is optimism.
Yeah.
Would you say that's their optimism or hopefulness?
Yeah, I think that that's definitely there. I think one of my challenges is that I'm also just not a generally like uber optimistic person, which is how I see a lot of coaches, is that they tend to be a lot more optimistic about like, you can change, right, and you can do this. And I'm not, that's not how I am.
But maybe I think you've got a very good point about how you might approach coaching people in a very different way, in this authentic way, that, maybe the message you want to convey to people is that, look, living with anxiety, depression, and ADHD is not easy. And I don't think it's fair to tell you that things are going to be, just a bed of roses. Like, it's tough. But what we're learning from your own experience here is that if you can contain, manage, or mitigate anxiety and self-doubt, it creates space for a bit more optimism. It creates space for a bit more hopefulness. Right? I don't know that you're going to start the project tomorrow, but I know that there's fewer barriers in the way.
Yeah, for sure.
Thanks for tuning in to the CBT Dive. Don't miss an episode. Subscribe to our YouTube channel at thecbtdive.ca. You can also listen on the go, wherever you get your podcasts. To follow Rahim on social media, check out ladyativan.com. See you soon.